driveway, and there were about 10 of us living in a 2 or 3 bedroom house. Devi and I had a young son who was 3 years old in 1979. We had a little bedroom, and somebody else lived in a walk-in closet. That's how crowded the house was. Then, quite quickly, we transited from that to a much bigger space. And so we came within 2 or 3 months from this little 3-bedroom apartment to a 45-room house. 2-bedroom. To a 45-room house, which was Ananda's first real ashram and teaching center. But when we began teaching, I think we probably canceled as many classes because nobody showed up as we actually taught in those early years. And we realized we had Sunday services, and gradually the numbers built. You just have to keep at it and keep at it and keep at it, and put out the best energy to serve people that you can. Gradually the numbers built to maybe 25 people would come to a Sunday service. At the time, at the height, we had about 30 people living in this it was basically a huge house in the ritziest part of San Francisco. And it was, from our standpoint, extraordinarily expensive at the time, not so much now, but I think we were paying $7,500 a month rent.
Some of you probably, Nicole, you probably were there.
Nicole took her yoga teacher training.
Yeah,
Right.
right, yeah.
Right.
That's where it all started.
Yeah, we all started. And so the numbers of people coming in the public were not all that great, but I think that you will also find this to be true. The real value of, it was called Ananda House, the real value of Ananda House was not that it served large numbers of the public. The real value was it gave a venue for service to the residents that lived there. And out of the 30 people who lived there, probably over time there might have been 45 or 50 different people that lived there. I would guess that half of them became long-term members of Ananda. Many of them moved here, many of them dispersed and went to other colonies, started other colonies. But it's really, in a way, we have the focus that what we're doing is trying to get big numbers of people and lots of energy and not accolades. I don't think anybody is in it for accolades, but the sense that the real job is kind of quantitative, but the real work is qualitative. And I imagine that those of you who've been doing it for any length of time will find that in many cases the quantity of people that you serve has kind of plateaued or begun to grow only slowly. But the numbers of core people, those people who come again and again, and who it becomes life-changing to have a center, to have a meditation group, that qualitative work is more important. And it echoes something that happened in Master's life. All of you know that during the 1920s, he went on what he called his spiritual campaigns. And mid-1920s up to the early mid-1930s. So he was going out, and he was the most popular speaker in the country at the time, speaking to audiences of 1,000, 5,000, whatever the hall would hold. He would have twice as many people trying to get in. So it was Madison Square Garden, he'd have 5,000 people trying to get into his classes there. So enormous energy, enormous popularity. But at one time, somebody, and I think it was in Minneapolis, but I'm not sure, someone came to him and said, oh, how wonderful. We have 5,000 people who have come. And Master said, if we have 5 real devotees, we'll be fortunate. And so he did that spiritual campaign, not because of the numbers, but because he was planting seeds of magnetism. And so, again, that reflects what Swami did. We have to do an outer work because we have to plant those seeds of magnetism. And the more you can do that, the more places you can go. Each of you will have a different kind of a scope, you know. So if you're in a small town, maybe you go to the library or yoga postures classes or whatever. You have to try to put out magnetism outwardly. But then what Master said in about 1933 and 1934, he wrote Rajarsi Janakananda, and he said, you know, the time for just being out on the road and having lots of people who come mainly out of curiosity is over. Now I'm going to go, maybe it was after they got Mount Washington, which was 1936. Now I'm going to go and reside in Mount Washington and let the serious devotees come to me. And so there's always this quantitative aspect and qualitative aspect to the work that we're doing. And in the long run, the qualitative aspect is more important. But you can't get to the qualitative aspect without the quantitative aspect. And so, and the quantitative aspect is also extremely important. We don't want to get into the fallacy that unless a person comes again and again and again, becomes a core member, then those who don't, it's kind of worthless. Devi and I used to kind of be amused or bemused that we would have people come to a class or to a Sunday service, and they would come up afterwards and they would say, this was the greatest thing I have ever done in my whole life. This is just amazing.
I've been looking for this my whole life.
And then they don't come back. And then they don't come back. Yep. Yep.
You've
Yep.
experienced.
I guess they were looking for it, and once they found it,
That
all
was
right.
it.
Done.
They check it off.
That
Bucket
reminds
list.
me, during the San Francisco years, we would go out and teach classes outside of the ashram. And one time we were teaching in a Unitarian church, and this church in San Francisco opened itself up to different kinds of spiritual teachers to come in, and they rented out their space very inexpensively. So we were teaching how to meditate series, I think a 6-week series, which was typically what we did. And so Devi, this was the first night, Devi was out with a little sign-up table outside the room, and I was getting the room set up. And these two kind of fashionable ladies come trotting up, and one of them says, "Whoa, what's this one?" And Devi said, "Oh, this is how to meditate course." "Oh, meditation. We already did that one."
I had to bite my tongue from saying, really?
So, but we might think that all of that is relatively not very valuable. But we now, because Ananda has been here for so long, we have people that come back and say, I was here in 1972. I only visited that one weekend, but I've never forgotten that weekend. And Ananda has always been a part of my aspiration from that time. And they come back 35 years later. And so those seeds that are planted, we don't know when they're going to sprout or how much good they're going to do. our job, there's a whole aspect of the Gita. Maybe a quarter of the teaching of the Gita is about karma yoga and nishkam karma. Nishkam karma is to do action because it's the right thing to do without worrying about the fruits of that action. So you just do the job. You do the very, very best job that you can. And you don't worry about the fruits of that. You don't worry about numbers. You don't worry about whether people seem to take it very deeply. None of that. Because you are being blessed by offering these teachings. Master came with a world-changing mission, and we're part of that. We have an enormously valuable karmic opportunity in this life, because, as Swami put it, he asked Master one time, "Did you come to bring a new religion?" And Master said, "No, I came to bring a new dispensation." So a kind of new flow of grace. But the religion is an eternal religion. Sanatana Dharma is basically that we all come from God, and that we are expressions of God, and that the purpose of life is gradually to increase self-awareness until we become aware enough that our true self is God, self-realization. And that's Sanatana Dharma. So Master didn't come to bring any new religion, but he came to bring a new expression and a new dispensation because of the change from Kali Yuga to Dwapara Yuga. It was now time to have a new expression of what was going to work for people in this particular, one could say, life cycle of the planet. Not the physical life cycle, but the life cycle of consciousness in the planet. And he came to bring the right techniques. Babaji, Lahiri Mahashaya, the meeting between Lahiri when Babaji called Lahiri to him in the Himalayas. And you all know the story from the autobiography. But Lahiri then was given touch, and he went into samadhi for basically 7 or 8 days. And at the end of that time, he begged Babaji not to make him return to Benares and the noise and going to work every day for the British government. And, it wasn't exactly the ideal life for the Himalayan yogi. But Babaji said that there was a reason that I did not call you until you had mild worldly responsibilities, and that your job is to take these teachings back to the people in the cities. And in fact, in the biography of Lahiri, he incarnated in order to do that task, and he knew it. And one of the things that he said is that for too long, this was in like 1860s that this happened. So we're talking almost, Shakespearean times. For too long in India, these teachings had been kind of secretive and available only to people who renounced the world, went into an ashram, or went into the Himalayas or something of that sort. But by the time Lahiri came along, he saw that the ages were changing, and the time was here to bring these teachings to everybody. And so in that request of his to Babaji, when Babaji gave him the technique of Kriya, told him to teach it, he said, "Can I loosen the restrictions of Kriya and teach it to not just those who are already highly advanced, but those men and women who are sincere and seeking advancement?" The deeper story behind that is that he knew that that was his mission when he came into this incarnation, and that he came in to bring the technique to especially householders, because he saw gradually that the renunciates, those who left the world, began to become haughty and look down on householders, even though it was the householders who were supporting them. And there was this kind of false dichotomy. And he knew that the time had come to bring teachings into the world, and to men and women like himself, who had a family, who had children, who had responsibilities, who had a job. And he needed a teaching that was so efficient that those people could make deep spiritual progress even while continuing their worldly responsibilities. And he modeled that for us. And so that is one of the, one could say, strains of DNA that works through the whole line of Master and our path and the path of self-realization, and of course Ananda. And Ananda, one could say, its primary mission is to show how these teachings can be both lived and offered in every aspect of life, offered in rearing children, offered in business, offered in schools, offered in Michigan, offered in Maine, offered in Marin County, and offered in every little nook and cranny, because this particular path is meant to be given to people so that they, in the circumstances that they now find themselves, have a path, a spiritual path that has the grace of God behind it. This is a new dispensation. So it's the grace of God that is behind it in order to help people with their spiritual progress, and to help the world at this time with its spiritual progress. But for each of us who have a meditation group or a meditation center, our job is to bring that ray to the very people who are coming to us, and to serve those people both quantitatively and qualitatively with the highest teaching that we can, with the best energy that we can. Unlike the early years when we were starting and when Swami was starting, we now have a vast network of people to help support that, and a huge amount of material. You can get 1,000 videos of Swami on YouTube. You can get 3,000 talks of Swami. You can get classes. You can get, well, you all know. And if you don't know, you're going to learn during this retreat. But there's an enormous amount of backup material. But that backup material can reach out amorphously, but it can't reach out quantitatively and qualitatively into your particular area without your energy and willingness behind it. So it's a very, very, very important work that you're doing. I'll just end by saying that the day that I had quit my job and I went to work for Swamiji, this was in 1968, there was a man visiting. His name was Adana Lay, and Swami introduced him, and he had been the center leader in Vancouver. At this time, SRF center leader, and at this time he had moved from there, and he was, in fact, I think he was living in Texas. So Texans get to clap here. Anyway, Swami told me the story that at one time Adana Lay was such a good center leader in Vancouver that Swamiji, who by this time was working with center leaders, came to Master and said, we have this wonderful center leader in Vancouver. Maybe we should ask him to move here and live here at Mount Washington. And Master said, if he's doing good work in Vancouver, he should be in Vancouver. And so Master and Kamala, we just republished the beautiful book, Flawless Smith. If you haven't read it, do. It's a beautiful book. Master sent her. It was not her karma to live at Mount Washington. She was very, very close. She and her mother and eventually her husband were very close to Master. But it was not her karma to be at Mount Washington, and he wanted her to. She was in Oakland or Richmond and started a meditation group there in the San Francisco Bay Area. So Master also recognized the value and the need to have teachers that are in local areas so that people have somebody that they can come to. And because just reading, even just watching classes, does not have the life-changing qualitative magnetism that having a friend and a spiritual mentor and guru guide has for people.
I'll share a few words now. First of all, again, thank you all for coming. It's just so wonderful. And we haven't had a big meditation group leader conference in a few years, so I think we'd really like to keep having them and build on them and have regional ones, because you're the workers in the field and you need reinforcements on an inward level and outward level. I'd like to share with you a beautiful story that I heard just a few weeks ago. There was a young boy who was born and grew up here at Ananda Village. His mother and father were both very committed and deep devotees of this path, but he didn't really feel that resonance within himself. And he'd finished high school, and he was very interested. He had a beautiful voice, he was talented. He wanted to go down to Los Angeles, and he was accepted in with a good financial package to an acting school down there. And so his mother, who lives here still, said, well, I'll take you down, we'll help you get settled, and then you can follow this pursuit. And while they were there, she said, I'd like to go to Master's different sacred places in Los Angeles. So they went to Forest Lawn. Probably most of you have been there, where Master's body is interred. And this young man, I'll share his name, Keshava. He went with his mother kind of to tag along with what his mother was doing. He didn't really have an interest himself. And his mother went up to the place in Forest Lawn where Master's body is housed, and she, pronounced. And Keshava just went up and kind of, not wholeheartedly, he just put his head on the marble there. And immediately, this young 18-year-old boy had a vision. And in the vision, he was a soldier in a battle. And he was in medieval armor. He was riding a big horse. A very intense battle. And one of the enemy soldiers with a sword or lance dehorsed him. I'm not sure what the term is, but knocked him off his horse. And he was laying on his back, kind of stunned, quite vulnerable in the middle of the battlefield. And just then, and this was all very vivid, and it just came immediately into his mind, this big horse rode up, was hovering over him, and he looked up, and first he saw just the armored leg, and then he looked up, and he knew it was William the Conqueror. And Master told us that in the previous incarnation, he was William the Conqueror. And William looked at him and said, crossing time and space, he said, you served me in that lifetime, will you serve me in this lifetime? And that was it, just like that. And the vision was over. Obviously, it's changed the whole course of of his life. He went on to take discipleship and get Kriya, moved into our ashram in Los Angeles, still pursued his acting, but served in the ashram as the choir director and so forth, and is a devotee, a deep devotee. Well, after I heard that story, I was sitting one day in meditation in our meditation room at our home here at the village, and I looked at Master's picture, and I was thinking, were we your soldiers? And I actually got a very profound response. Yes, you were my foot soldiers. And I thought, here we are again. And, you know, it was, I understood, and Jyotish and I talked about it, that in that lifetime as William the Conqueror, Master's mission was as an actual warrior to establish a new world kind of government. He brought in new thinking in government, in financial arrangements for government, in ecology, and just many, many things that have really changed the course of Western history to this day. But if we were foot soldiers in that lifetime, not to dwell too much on past lives, but that was how we were serving him then. Now, once again, we're his foot soldiers, but he has a different mission. His mission, you know, as Jyotish said, in the 1920s, he had what he called his spiritual campaigns. So he was a spiritual warrior, but it's the same spirit of conquest, but the conquest was conquering materialism, bringing a new way of life, a new way of thinking into the world at this time. And we're all his foot soldiers. And what a blessing and what an honor to be them. And there's a wonderful saying in the Indian scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, all of Krishna's soldiers look like Krishna. And so, meaning that we all carry that same vibration. And so, what do Krishna's soldiers look like? What do Master's foot soldiers look like in this lifetime? And that's all of us sitting in this room, and many, many others. Well, we learned from Swamiji how you do this, how you are there for people in the most helpful level to enrich their souls. And it's not about self-importance, it's not about title and position, surely not about success. It's simply about carrying a way of light. Once someone asked Swami, you may have heard this story, was a spiritual leader from another organization. And she was came and was looking and observing Ananda, and she said, how do you designate or name your ministers? And Swami said, oh, well, we must observe them over a long period of time. And she said, oh, I understand. They need to know the teachings and be able to express themselves clearly and so organize a class. And Swami said, no, none of those things. We need to observe them to see, even in times of their own distress or difficulty or karmic challenges, if their first instinct is always to think of others. And that if we see that in them, then we will select them as a minister. Mm-hmm. And so we start to kind of sketch in, what do Krishna's soldiers look like? What do Master's soldiers look like? One, there's deep compassion and concern for others, first and foremost. You know, you can be the most brilliant teacher. You can know every aspect of the Vedas and the right pronunciation of the mantras, etc., etc. But if people come to you and there's no point of entry for them on a human level, they won't stay on. I remember once going to a temple of another organization, and I walked in, I meditated, and I felt so inspired. And then I walked out, and I just wanted somebody to be there so I could say thank you. This was a wonderful experience. My heart it was open, and I wanted to share that open heart with someone. There was no one around, just no one. And I finally just laughed. And it cut off the experience for me. And I thought, I hope that never happens at Ananda, that if someone comes and their heart is open, that I hope there's always someone there to share that experience with them, to say, I'm so happy for you that you felt God's presence. So that deep compassion and concern for others. And to create also, and Swami modeled this so well, sharing experiences that are filled with simple human joy. Swami would, I can't tell you the whole parties and the outings and the P.G. Woodhouse stories. Did he need to do that? No. He was feeling God's joy, I think, with him all the time. But he wanted to have the shared experience of a joyful human time together. And so that's so important for people to be able to see, oh, you laugh. I mean, sometimes it's a big shock to you. You enjoy a nice meal together. You have potlucks. People sometimes think, well, these are yogis, they're in the spine, whatever that means. But just for them to be able to experience, there isn't a separation. Master said that. Swami lived it, that we could observe. Master lived it too, but we didn't see it. The continuity of joy from meditation to social interaction, the continuity of love from your meditation room to sharing with someone in need, the continuity of divine love and the highest expression of human love. It's not separate. And that was such an essential part of Master's teachings. There's no part of life that isn't divine. And we have to share that. And what a joy. What a joy it is to do it. I mean, it's like, oh God, one more outing. In the early years when Swami was well, he had the pool. It wasn't the beautiful pool Crystal Hermitage. It was a big doughboy, stand-up pools. And he would have pool parties, and he would be kind of sitting on some guy's shoulders, and they would be wrestling with another, young man on somebody else's shoulders. And, it was just for the sheer expression of bringing joy into life. So caring for people, sharing joy with them, finding ways for them to serve, to feel validated. I remember Jyotish was speaking about our time in San Francisco House. There was a wonderful young man who lived there with us for a while, who isn't a part of the London, that people come and people go. But I think once the seeds are planted, they never entirely go. And he said to us, and I remember Swami had a room at Ananda House, and this young man, Gregory, he said, I'd like to do like in bathrooms, I like to, I can't remember the word, but when you stencil and take the fixtures and paint them and make them over. And so he did this beautiful job on Swamiji's bathroom. All the fixtures, he gold, put gold paint on them and put beautiful stencils, and it really was lovely. And Swami loved it. And we praised Gregory a lot, and Gregory came to us kind of quietly and said, I have always thought I had something worthwhile to give, but no one ever wanted it till I came to Ananda. And so find what people's gifts are, and say, we want your gifts. Judy's husband, Lauren, who passed away a year and a half ago, he was the head of our, he was one of the more remarkable souls of Ananda. He went to Michigan, knowing no one, virtually no one, lived there in a basement apartment, started a work there that has grown and grown and is still alive. He passed away 2 months ago. But he was so good at that. We went and visited, and he said he noticed that someone played the guitar a little bit. So he said, oh, you can play the Festival of Light. He would look at what people's natural talents were, and he would say, develop that. We need that. whether you do it or not, we need to give people a chance to feel needed and validated. And so, again, to look at the spiritual growth of the individual. What are their next steps? It's so important. And it's not that we have to be the great guru or we have to know everything, but just if you see someone's seems to really be able to have a good meditative life, a good sadhana, maybe you say, oh, maybe we can meditate together one night and have a long meditation together. If you see someone loves to serve and cook, maybe you can organize the potluck. So draw people out according to what their natural talents are and make them feel worthwhile. That's Swamiji, that was one of his greatest gifts. When we all came, we were so, in this lifetime, we were so new to the spiritual path. Just beginning meditation, just beginning really studying the teachings. But he made us feel we could do it. You've heard me probably tell the story. Sometimes he would walk into a room and there'd be a bunch of us in there and he would say, "Good morning, all you great souls." And he didn't say it facetiously. He didn't say it as a joke. He said it to make us feel that's who we were. And I don't know if we entirely believed it. But some part of us was nurtured by that thought. And it gave us the motivation to keep going for a lifetime in the spiritual path. And dealing, how else do master soldiers, what do they look like? You know, we talked about people coming and going. The door should be always open. If, you know, people, this is kind of an odd story, but I'll share it. There was a man who came in the early years who had been a Hell's Angel in California, and he looked it. And well, I won't describe it. He looked as he'd been a Hell's Angel. And he told us, he said, I've done bad things in my life. I wasn't caught, but you think about it, I did it. And he read autobiography of the yogi, Ram Leela. Swami gave him the name Ram Leela, means God's play. And it changed his life. And I'll tell the whole story as it happened. He went to SRF. They wouldn't have anything to do with it. And he said, I don't know why. I didn't go in chains and leather. I went dressed like a regular citizen. He came here, and Swami met him. And Swami looked into him, his soul, and he could see he was sincere. He said, come, live here with us. And he was very nice. He was a good member for a while. And but then his darkness got the better of him. And he began speaking against Ananda and criticizing us and so forth, and he left. And then some time went by, and then we were having a spiritual renewal week right out here in the Temple of Leaves. And all of a sudden, there were several hundred people there, and all of a sudden Swami looks up, and there at the very back of the leafed area, the open area, there was Swami, looking very shamefaced. And Swami looked and saw me and said, Ram Leela. And he walked up a long, many hundreds of people down the center aisle. And Swami looked at me and said, Ram Leela, you've been a bad boy. And I looked at him and said, I know, Swami, I won't do it again.
Swami took his kind of kinky hair and shook it a little bit. Won't do it again.
I did, Swami. And he didn't stay, but he kept a connection all the rest of the years. And I don't think he went back to his dark ways. So I know he didn't do that.
He became the Olympic weightlifting coach for Nepal.
And married the princess of Nepal. That's
Oh, wow.
Of which I think there were many. Anyway, he was a character.
Steve is a character, but there is a point to this. The point is, if people come, they're with you, they're your core member, and all of a sudden they're gone. And then they come back, and what's the natural human instinct? Oh, you were faithful, you walked through. No, you've come back. How wonderful. How do you want to be involved? Do you want to be involved? Do you want to keep going? So people come, people go, but we stay centered. We're grateful for whatever involvement they have, whatever participation, on whatever level, that divine friendship, that loyalty. Because that's what the Guru gives us. The Guru gives us his unconditional loyalty. Swami told us a very interesting kind of adjunct to one of the chapters in Autobiography of a Yogi. Remember when Master leaves, tells he's already met Sri Teshwar, he's in the ashram, and he says, I'm going to go up to the Himalayas for some time. And Sri Teshwar didn't say, don't go, I'm your guru, what are you looking for out there? He just simply said, rather obliquely, I don't think you'll find what you're looking for there. But then, Master went, and that was the story of the, he's trying to find the, I can't remember the name of the saint, Ram Gopal Masunda. And, he can't find him, and he keeps getting wrong directions, and finally he does. And he asked Ram Gopal to give him some money. He said, it's not for me to give, and you're guru. So then, he comes back, and he doesn't know how he will be received. But it was just, you've come back. Let's go you might be hungry. Let's go make some dinner for you. Swami said it was actually many months that Master was gone. Not the way it kind of was portrayed, that maybe it was a couple of weeks.
I think it was over a year.
Yeah, I didn't say that. Swami said it was over a year. He walks back and goes, you come. Let's make you some dinner. All of Master's soldiers are like Master. So just to have that openness of heart no matter what. And then finally, the teachings. How do we present the teachings? Because our Master's body of teachings is so vast and it's so subtle, and I think I don't think I can certainly speak for myself, and I think I speak for most people who are trying to share the teachings. You never feel adequate to the task. You never feel that your knowledge of the whole body of Master's teachings really goes deep enough. What if somebody asks you a question you don't know the answer to? Oh my gosh, what if you look foolish? And yet, Swami always said, I don't teach, I share. And that's such a good way to pick it up. And Christ says in the Bible when he's sending out the disciples, and they're saying the same thing. Tell Master, we're simple fishermen. How can we do this? We're not learned men. I wonder if they were even literate all of them. And Christ says to them, from the fullness of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so, from your own love of God, from your own experience of discipleship, from your own attempt to go deep in meditation, share what you know, share what's real for you. People sense it, believe me. There was one of our core members in India who came very early on and now is in charge of our applications in India. We asked her once, a very fine woman, we said, Sangeeta, why did you come to Ananda? There's so many ashrams in India, so many teachers. And she said, yes, I've gone to many of them, but I have never, in all my experience, had such a sincere group of people as I have found in Ananda. And that's the most important thing we can share, is our sincerity and our deep attempt to be a good devotee. It's not like you don't have to have it perfect. For people's sense, if you're genuine, if you try, if it's real for you, if you're walking your talk, doesn't mean you have to be, the most profound meditator in the world, or any of those things. But the sincere attempt, if we can transmit that to others, that's a huge thing. Our own sincerity and help them to feel, I can do this. I may not, I don't know how far I'll get, but I can sincerely follow these teachings. And so not to be intimidated. You may have heard the story that in the early days of Ananda, this was like the first year or two, Haridas, who is now serving with, Swami Haridas, who is serving with his wife Rama in our center in Bangalore, India. He was right out of high school. He was a surfer in Los Angeles, and not very articulate, not very educated, kind of just a little guy, lovable, wonderful, but not very articulate, no experience teaching, but heart of gold, good as gold, sincere to the core. And Swami was going to be going down to Los Angeles to give some talks, and Haridas was part of the team that was going down in advance to try to make media connections, radio, television, for Swami to speak. And so he got to this TV station, one of the bigger ones in Los Angeles, a daytime talk show, and he was saying, well, there's Swami Ananda, a direct disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda, blah, blah, blah. But the man was so struck by Haridas's enthusiasm, he said, I don't care about that Swami, I want you on my show. And so
This was LA Today. It was the primary morning talk show.
And so Haridas called up Swami and he said, what should I do? And Swami said, if he wants you to speak, then you speak. You go on that show. And so he did. And we never saw the show, but we know they asked him the question, why do you wear that bracelet? He didn't know to call the bangle, but why do you wear that particular bracelet? And he said, my mind kind of froze and I couldn't think of what the real explanation was. So I simply said, it reminds me to think of him. And Swami said that was the perfect answer because it was from your heart. And so Swami gave us those. Swami could have said to Hari, you me, they're choosing you over me. He said, no. What will flow through you is what happens to flow through you. And that's just perfectly valid. And then just to close in our teaching about how to kind of attitudes, always remember, if you're open, God and Guru will be the right thing to say. Even if in personal counseling, this has happened to me many times. Somebody will come with a real problem in their life, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't know what to tell this person. But then if you just let them talk, try to feel from their heart to their heart, try to build a bridge of blessing, the right thing will come for you to say, even though you may not have thought of it at all at the beginning. But in your teaching too, I can't tell you how often this has happened to me, that our lives are often busy, and at this point we often don't have a lot of time to prepare for things, but I'll think, oh, where's that story? And I think it's in this book. I'll open the book and the page will open to that book. Just this morning in the car, this afternoon we're videoing some television shows for an Indian television station, and there was a chapter in a story in the autobiography that I wanted to find. This is when we were driving from the village here, and so I grabbed the autobiography. I'll use this time in the car to try to find that story. And there was an old bookmark stuck in the book, and I kind of was looking, where's that story? And then I looked in the index, and no, it's not there. And finally, oh, there it is in the index. And I open the page. It's right where that word bookmark was. The master was trying to say, girl. I was trying to show you where it was, but you were overriding it with your own thoughts. Anyway, just trust the master to give you the words. In personal counseling, in greeting someone, in comforting someone at a difficult time, in sharing the teachings, because we're his soldiers, and his power flows through us in this great effort to bring his love, his grace, his consciousness into this world. So we need to also leave time now to see if you have questions or comments or share
Someone else
experience.
said questions, comments, or snide remarks. Something to do?
Well, I just had one thing to add to what Devi was saying. It gave me a lot of encouragement in part to realize that it's not all that important whether or not you say the right words, or you know, as we said, or you're well read and you know techniques and all of that. And I have found it happen to me, as other people, other teachers have told me the same situation where you may be beginning your class or whatever, and later on someone will come to you and say, you know, I attended a Sunday service that you did 5 years ago or something, and you said such and such. That was the best advice I've had. I followed it, it's been wonderful, it's so helpful, and they go on, and I'm thinking, I didn't ever say that. I know I never said that. And I start to say, oh, but stop, because what's important is they drew from you, or God, it was you who cares. They drew their answer that they learned. And it was all about just the vibration, and hardly any of it had to do with what you said or did not say. And, you know, feeling like you didn't give a good discourse or whatever you did, that's not important. What's important is that they were able to draw the vibration. And I think that comes from them feeling welcome, feeling nurtured, feeling cared about, and that they're there, and they have the ability to draw that to you.
There was a woman who came to our center in Los Angeles. We didn't know who she was at all. And she just sort of walked in for the first time. And she asked this one person who was the center leader there at the tower, not the program, so is there anything I can do to help you? And he kind of looked around and not really came into the person until I said, well, you could empty the wastebaskets and
Take the garbage.
take the garbage out. So she did. And then we found out later, extremely wealthy person. House full of servants. But you know, I think she was actually charmed because we didn't say, oh, we just said, oh, you know, the guys, you know. And of course in India it's different because there's such a stratified consciousness when we have Seva days or do karma yoga, they say, oh yes, we will certainly come. And then they send their servants. And the servants do the karma yoga and then, yes, we participate.
It's changed now. We started to retrain.
Sounds like the servants are lucky.
Can't hear you?
I said it sounds like the servants are the lucky ones. They're using a good opportunity.
Okay, I'm going to throw a question at you. What do you, if you can think of a story to share, whatever you like, about something significant that happened with you in an interaction with another person in your center? Something in your center.
In the center.
Something like
Or the meditation group work that you're doing.
something that, something you'd like to share that you feel is important that you found in doing this service.
I think one of the experience with the Rotary Boston, you were mentioning how, you've had people
there was a man who came to one of our small meditations, and he was actually in California in the 70s, and he actually came up here and saw Swami. And he, afterwards, after the meditation, he was raving to me and everything about how wonderful it was, how he definitely was going to come back. And for the next, 8 or 9 weeks, he would email me and say, oh, I'm sorry I missed the next Sunday, but I'll definitely be back the next time. And he kept doing that quite a few times, so I think he was really sincere, but then finally I never heard from him again, so it's a little bit poignant.
Yeah.
I think it seemed like his soul was really trying to reconnect, but, it's for many of us, and for myself, I was disconnected for 14 years. Sometimes your personal karma just really yanks you away.
There's the poignant piece right there.
That's the point of this.
It's almost like the meditation group is a little life raft, and there are people that touch that life raft, and then kind of the current pulls them and say, I'll be back, I'll be back. But just kind of drifts
I
and
was touched by his emails, they were so sweet. He was apologizing, he was so sincere, but something was definitely.
Last Sunday, I did service in the news center, and there was only 2 people that came. I was sharing how the master really helped me when it was a really difficult time in my life. I had given book life, and it just wasn't what I planned to say. It just came through, and it was about caring for when I had been lost. And when the service was over, one woman had only been there once before, but she had attended the night as well. We found that she came up to me and said, "I heard you all night, and exactly what you said is what I needed." And so the fact that it was such a small group, just the 3 of us there, allowed me to share something that I might not have shared. It really connected the 2 of us, and that was very sweet.
It's a very important thing to do. Sometimes we think, groups are so small, but there's a value in that as well, because
Intimacy.
it's how people, how they get started. And another thought that I had wanted to share, and you've probably heard this story, but it was in Minneapolis, and Master gave a talk, and one woman said, I will keep the teachings alive in this city, and she started a little center. And sometimes, most of the time, nobody came, but she would give a lecture, she's the old master, to the 4 walls. She would deliver a talk, and she did that year after year, and he said, that's the spirit. And so 2 or 3 sometimes are big numbers.
Actually, with a small group, you cannot go there and sit in the back and do it. I've actually had it where only one other person came, and it was so one-on-one that we were uncomfortable, and then thankfully this other person came out. It's a whole, you really have to be present when it's a small group.
I'd like to add to that because I plead guilty. I'm an entrepreneur, so numbers is important, number of customers. So I kind of have that consciousness, especially when I started in this. And I remember how that was entirely dispelled on giving a group meditation in the evening. One person shows up. And she says, I don't know, maybe I should leave. And I said, no, let's do it. And we didn't meditate at all. It turned into an hour-long spiritual counseling session. And I'm not apologizing. But she had just left her teenage son, and she just started to cry. And so I'm going, okay. So I love what I hear today because it reinforces one person being in the right place at the right time. And just asking for prayer, help me. And I found that
do is we help a person's soul to feel relaxed enough without the non-access. It's more about listening and caring than it is about.
And we're able to share, but I remember when you said one person, it reminded me when Jyotish and I and a few others were helping to get the work started in Italy. Swami was there for a while and came back to America. And then in the spring he was returning, and he said, we've never really started trying to bring friends. Can you organize a talk in Paris? So we said, okay, we'll try. We had a small group in Paris, we thought. As it turned out, there was just one very, very odd woman. So she rented this kind of I don't know if it had been a discotheque, but it was a black room, all black, and you had to take the service elevator to get up. So it was, it was not kind of the venue that one usually chooses for Swamiji. And he arrived from Paris, and we met him at the airport. He was ill. He had a bad flu, and I thought, Swami, maybe you should give the talk tonight. He said, no, I committed, I have to do it. And so we go to this black room and try to make it be a little nicer, and then we waited, and this woman hadn't done any publicity. So we waited and waited, and no one came, which was, okay, so we just go back to your room, and we'll close it down here. But then, one man, and we said, so you go and we'll talk, and he goes, no, you can't do anything. And he sat down, even though he was ill with the flu, he talked with that man for a minute about how he met Master. I don't know what they talked about because we weren't sitting next to him, but when the man left, and he said a number of times, and we never saw him again. I don't think that's true. I don't think anybody that has a soul connection is forever out of the numbers. They're in it on some level. They're touched on some level. And we've heard people say, I came to Ananda in the 1970s or 80s, I never came back, but just knowing you are there has been totally amazing. And so maybe they never come back to your group, but they know you're there. And like that man who just couldn't break through, he knows you're there. Anyways, I know you know.
I was going to, when I had,
Talk louder.
Azu Raman. She's a psychiatrist from Iran, from
Right.
okay. Azu and I had a meditation group in Arcadia, California, which is in Los Angeles. And when it started, it would just be Azu and me, the only two people. And then one day, two women came. And one was the one who really wanted to come, and she brought her friend with her. She was a Taiwanese woman, and she came because she said her sister was dying from cancer, and she was distraught. She didn't, didn't know what to do, where to turn, and so she came every Sunday with her friend, and we meditated, we talked, and then one Sunday she came and she said, "My sister has passed." She says, but I'm okay. And she says, I just wanted to thank you. She says, I'm all right. And then she never came. And I just never, and her last time she gave me a gift of this wonderful Taiwanese green tea, I still have. But that point of that, I feel like even if you just serve somebody for the moment, and you never see them again, that seed is in them. And like you said, it's going to sprout. One day it will sprout.
Deanna.
Okay, I don't know if you're going to put on the details, it won't take too long, but we had an experience recently with someone who'd been a member of an early meditation group. Okay, I'm sorry.
Some people have
Sitting here, it's echoing all over the
place.
place.
It's funny acoustics,
Okay.
and some people have.
So we had a person who was involved in the early days of the meditation group we had after Ocean Song closed in the mid-'80s, and then took Korea at that time, or had come when he had it when he came, but he left the path, and came back about 2 years ago, and I had, this is somebody, it's been like, 20 years maybe, he's been gone. But he did come back. He recently passed after becoming very involved with our group. Like, we can have to go through that, cancer. But don't say they're not going to, don't think they're gone. They may come back. You may see these people again. And all the time out there, Master was, in his life, and he called him back. And it was a really important lesson for me to see.
Just sharing that, Maggie, an idea came to my mind that maybe you all do this already, but it might be a nice practice. To keep some kind of a very nice binder or notebook, and when new people come, write their names down, write the day they come, and then just keep that. Keep it over the years and pray for those names. And then we always see them again.
We have an online list of people when they sign into we send out a weekly newsletter online, and so we have a sign-up sheet, and we actually have probably in that the day that they sign up and the names of people. So
But those are people that have reached out, and
The
it's our
praying.
responsibility to keep them.
The praying for them, that's the Well, just a similar story. I was in this woman who's been coming to my yoga class. I've known her in the community, and she started to come very, very regularly, and you can see that she's really tuning in to something. And I don't think it's the asanas. And I don't, my yoga classes they're not associated. I do the affirmation sometimes, but I don't, it's not Ananda based. Anyhow, so she invites me to be part of this group of 3 other women, so there's 4 of us, talking about transitions, and they're supporting each other through transitions. And she's 67, and she's been working in a school part-time for many, many years, and she doesn't want to retire. And she said, I don't want to retire. I think it means I'm old. And I just came through me. I said, geez, it sounds to me like, it makes me think of freedom. And that's all I said, and the group went on, and then the week later, she came in and said, thank you so much for what you said. She said, that was what I needed to hear, and I'm going to retire. And I realized, I had to go back and think about it, and I realized it was Swami. Freedom, that was the word, and he reminds me of freedom, and that's what came through. He came through me and said, it's freedom. Now you can, she's a wonderful singer and musician, and she can really, so.
It's so wonderful when you realize God comes through you and it's not us.
In regards to service, early on when I first started with Cynthia Sappho, when I started the meditation group in Fresno, California, and we shared the service. And she had to be out of town that weekend, and I'm also entrepreneurial, so I'm also looking at numbers, and I had that mindset. So I opened the space, and I got it all ready, and one person showed up, and I had someplace to be afterwards. So I was already thinking, if nobody comes, good, I can pick up, I can go. That's where my head was. One person shows up, and she says, oh, I'm the only one here. And I said, yes, you're the only one. I think you're the only one that's coming. And she said, oh. I said, if you don't mind, I really have something I need to do. So I put the kibosh on it. The energy stopped right there.
Thanks for sharing that
And,
story.
because I wasn't thinking about anything but what I wanted to do, I needed to do. So she leaves, she gets her stuff, she leaves, I pick up, I rush out the door, I do what I need to do. It was probably a month later, in meditation, and I get this, oh my God, what did I do? That was wrong. It took that long before something opened up in me. And consequently, not because of that, but she kept coming to the group, and she was great, and then she moved away. And I happened to see her, it was at one of the events at Ananda Village. I'm going back this happened 14 years ago. I saw her, and I walked up to her, and I gave her a hug, and we were talking, and I said, I have an apology to make to you. I abandoned you that day. and she said, you know what, I was so disappointed that I didn't get to stay and meditate. She said, but I figured, well, you had this thing to do and it was okay. And it took that amount of time to work through the regret and the guilt around not serving. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome, because it was, I felt awful. I was a bad girl. I got this.
Don't do it again.
That's the best part.
Hi. On that frame,
True confessions.
yes, this is about teaching. One of the first times that Christy had me teach something, I can't remember exactly what it was, but she said, I want you to help me, assist me to teach this class, and I'm going to do this part, and I want you to do this. And she gave me a topic to do. And so I'm like, I say yes because I want to do it, and then I go home and I'm like, oh, say yes. How does she expect me? I'm a newbie. I don't know what I'm saying or doing, and where am I going to get the skills to say it? All right, so I'm going to make an outline and a list and get involved and read everything and put it all together. And one thing she said, I said to her, well, that's fine and good, but I don't have any. She goes, just say something about your own experience. Say something about yourself, you know. Oh, God. I don't want to tell anybody anything about me. I don't want to share those things. So I go home and I do all this formal stuff and I spread it out. And so I go back, and it's the day of the class, and I'm in there, and it's my turn. So I start talking, and I've got my outline, and I'm reading off the words, and it's really hollow, and it's like, oh my God. I wrote, saying that it's just nothing. So then finally I hear the words in my head. It says, share something about you. And I'm still fighting with it, going, say thank you. And so I said, oh, all right, this is going nowhere, nobody's snoring. So all of a sudden I just said, all right. And I started to talk about myself and why I joined the path and what it had done to me and where this connected with my topic. And all of a sudden I saw the people's eyes, open up, and they start, leaning forward, and they're looking, and then somebody's crying, and even the stuff that I just didn't want to share just because of how, it was deep for me, was exactly what needed to be said there. And afterwards, the people were there going, wow, that was excellent. Wow. And I just, I kept looking. Christy's just sitting there going. But then I had this dream recently that was kind of odd, but it was sort of like that. The dream, it was Halloween, and I had forgotten it was Halloween. And so I'm dreaming, and I come to the realization that I've got to have something for trick-or-treat, and I didn't go out and I didn't buy anything. So I get all excited. I got to run to the store before the trick-or-treaters come, and I've got to get some candy and get back to the house. And so I go out and take a little longer than I had planned. So I come back to the house, and I'm looking at the candy that I had, and I all of a sudden decided that, it's probably not good enough, or, all the reasons why I decided not to share the candy, and I said, I'm just back in the house and pull the shades and close it up and not share this candy that I spent all this effort going out to get. And at that time, all of a sudden, I woke up and I said, wow, that was odd. And then I just realized in my life how often you spend going out to get the candy, because you have to have it and you have to have something to share with everybody. And then you get the candy and you won't share. And you have it, and you darken everything, and you don't want to like show that light at the end, and that's wrong. So I think it was pertinent, you know, something was trying to tell me to share my candy.
That is the real leap to interpret it.
Well, you
Yeah, it's the same
you
thing.
said, oh, I'm
It's the same
going
thing.
away.
It's exactly the same
You
story.
collected all yourself and said, oh, I got something more important to do.
Yeah, sort of follow on from that really. The Boston group started about 6 weeks ago, so it's brand new and we're starting, so I can I'll tell you this also. It's very terrifying the first time. So I got my plan together for the first day, and everything was prepared very mentally, you know. So that I'm going to do this here, this here, this here. I'm just not going to say anything, it's just going to be all rooms and Sunday books, etc. So I'm sitting meditating at home before I go to the group, and I play a little harmonium at home, but not particularly well, and I'm kind of terrified, very terrified of playing it. And so I started to have it, you know, I was playing, and I sit and meditate and praying for any last minute guidance before I go, and as I sort of open my eyes, I hear the words, bring your harmonium. And I was like, oh no. Is there any other guidance? You know?
I get a second opinion.
A second opinion, please. So I reluctantly fold it up and take it with me, and I sort of feel the beads of sweat coming on. Anyway, I had an iPod for my music, that was the plan. Anyway, I started to go through it as I prepared, everything was going fine, and I picked the easiest chant, one I knew the best, and I started to play. It was going quite well, and at some point halfway through the song, a thought popped into my head. I'm doing well at the harmonium. The second that happened, Sri Ram, J Ram, it just went off. Anyway, going back
How
again.
many have had that experience?
Anyway, I at that moment in time, I played. I kind of laughed to myself. I finished the chant, and at the end of it, then, based on my mistake, it helped me